But having said that, I'm the first to admit I don't know anything about vaccines or how they work. Um, and a lot of people, and I guess it's reasonable, have expressed concerns over, even Masons I know, expressed concerns over, they feel like it was a short time period from when we first had COVID. They feel like the process was rushed. So I guess my question is, uh, with your medical expertise, was the process rushed? How did the vaccine work? Are there potential dangers? Kind of just your take on the vaccine process.
Sure. So a couple of things normally happen when you go through a vaccine development, a vaccine trial. You go to a phase one where you're trying to focus on where things are, what's working, what is your idea for the vaccine development, how has it responded to a small subset of people. If it becomes promising and shows some favorable results, then you go to phase two, and in phase two, you widen the scopes because you want a much more diverse population to see what are the implications. So you're not just biasing to one group of people. Phase three, similarly, you go into a larger full trial. Much more individuals in the tens of thousands, if not more. And the goal there is to once again look at what we call safety and efficacy. What are the results that are showing up, and how are those safety trials being developed? And then you continue to proceed to evaluate that, in those next phases, to at least where you get to the point where you feel that okay, let's say you're 2 years out, the numbers are looking good, the data is fine, and we can then start to grow vaccine. And once you grow vaccine, that takes maybe another year or two, and then you start to disseminate vaccine out, right? That's the normal process. In a pandemic, where we have millions of people being infected and countless dying in the six figures and up. The scenario that fell into place was that a couple of things transpired. In December, roughly by the end of December, beginning of January, once the virus was identified, SARS-CoV-2, which we called COVID-19, that genetic makeup of that virus was disseminated to public health labs and scientific labs across the world. Canada got it, Italy got it. Everyone who had a public health lab or a scientific, laboratory, like virus, virology lab, received a copy of what that genetic makeup of this pandemic. And from that moment in time, folks either shifted work that they were already doing on vaccine development or virus development to focus on this because it's pandemic, which means it has not existed in our lexicon for at all. The neat thing, if I can use the term neat, tongue in cheek, the neat thing about making that shift, we already had before COVID-19, we had six other human coronaviruses that we were exposed to: SARS-1, MERS, MERS, Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome, which is another coronavirus. And then there were four coronaviruses which were identified in the 1960s. All right, so having that, and even looking at the history of the SARS virus and the MERS virus, there were already researchers in place working on potential vaccines to address those particular viruses. So the pivot or the shift into focusing on this one was an easier framework for several, right? So it wasn't as if they started in December or January. They started focusing on the current strain that we have while using several of the technologies and the research that they've been doing for a while, sometimes 2 years, sometimes a bit more than that. So when the public doesn't really know those nuances and just hear Operation Warp Speed and there's a vaccine, they think, oh, you just created this vaccine and it's not tested. Now, in reality, as if I'm getting these numbers right, just let me make sure I say it correctly. In reality, we know that we are 43 vaccines that are currently in phase one across the world. Phase one, there are 43 different vaccines that are being tested for safety and the proper dosage. Well, is this dose going to work? Is this going to be the proper one? There are 20 that are in phase two, which means that they're expanded into safety trials in the human population and looking to really increase that group. Then there are 18 that are in the large scale phase three. So, there are a lot of other vaccine candidates that are out there being, tested, et cetera. And we know at least there are six that are in early limited use. So all that means is because you normally follow that process that I described for like maybe about 2 years or so. What they have done, because of there being an emergency, because we're seeing a run on these deaths and these cases, the idea is like we should not wait until 2 years. We probably would decimate the entire or the human population by that time. So we will make an emergency use authorization to use what we have currently based on the information that we have been collecting thus far, which seems to be promising to some extent. So we can do that to at least save the larger humanity versus that of waiting an additional 2 years to then start to grow the virus. The other piece of that storyline is, as I mentioned to you before, you go through this process of growing the vaccine and testing it, or developing the test, and then you start to manufacture it. The difference in this case was that while the vaccine trials were being developed, there was also the decision made to start to manufacture those same vaccines while concurrently testing them out. The whole idea was, if in fact the numbers are promising, they show some great value in the efficacy and the data that's collected. You don't have to then sit down for another 6 to 9 to 12 months or 2 years to create new vaccine. You would have already been created and have it on tap, given if everything works out. So as a result, we now see that there's 6 vaccines that are in limited use between China, Russia, the U.S., other countries, Canada, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, etc. 2 have been at least approved for full use, both in the U.S. and other parts of the world, such as the Moderna and the Pfizer vaccines, which are mRNA. And there's one that was actually abandoned after the trial gave negative results. I want to say negative results. It had negative outcomes, meaning because of what they did to try to secure how they wanted to detect this virus, they ended up resulting in an unintended result, whereas the body thought it was HIV and was producing antibodies against HIV, which resulted in folks getting a positive HIV result. They didn't have HIV, but based on how they had made how they had created their vaccine, the vaccine incorrectly gave the immunologic response a signal that, oh, this is HIV. So that entire vaccine trial was abandoned and basically, shelved and trashed, because you don't want to be, giving the body the perception that an individual has HIV when they don't. So with that said, when people say that, well, things are happening too fast, etc., the only thing that really happened differently was that, one, they started growing it while they were testing it out versus waiting 2 years out to start growing it. And two, at least the early 2 vaccines that were approved are a new style vaccine that doesn't require you to create or use a what we call inactivated virus. We don't have to use a lesser virus to enter to create a vaccine and put that in you so that you have a response. But instead, this mRNA just tells the body that to create a protein, and then that body fights off the protein with your immune response. So some of that, I would say, and having those positive results of over 94% efficacy when they probably anticipated 50 to 60, really gave that impetus for why the vaccine on an emergency basis, has been pushed out, because it's shown such promising early results.
All right, it is Monday, May 3rd. I'm here in line at the pop-up clinic to get my first vaccine dosage. I know a lot of other Masons have already got theirs, older Masons, which is great. I'm here to get mine. And yeah, happy and thankful that they're having this, and thankful to all the nurses and healthcare workers who are making it possible. And it's a rainy day. I got a couple-hour wait, but I met some cool people, and I don't mind at all. And I'll let you know how it goes when I get out. All right, and I got the injection, and aside from waiting in very cold and well, not very cold, but rainy and kind of wet and gross weather for a couple hours. The line moved quickly. Everybody in the vaccine clinic was super professional, all of the healthcare workers. And I was able to, yeah, it went very smoothly. I met a lot of cool people waiting in line. The health unit staff was terrific. Obviously, and I think this is true for everybody, I'd rather, and everybody would rather that the need for the vaccine not exist. But since it does exist, I am grateful for all of the scientists and researchers and doctors who dedicated years of their lives in getting the training and expertise so that coronavirus, when this pandemic started, they were able to immediately go to work on finding a vaccine. And then obviously, I'm grateful for all of the doctors, nurses, and professionals, even the staff at the vaccine clinic who were keeping everything sanitized and cleaning up, cleaning the areas, which often are overlooked. I'm grateful for all of them also. And yeah, as I know everybody has their own opinions, I guess, but one thing I would say is, as a Mason, and I'm speaking only for myself, um, not on behalf of Grand Lodge or anything like that, but as a Mason, I think it's important that we, we be seen to be supportive and supporting of whether it be a vaccine or vaccinations or public health measures, wearing a mask. Obviously, that doesn't mean there aren't times when we won't disagree with a particular policy, or with vaccine rollouts, or any of that stuff. Like, there's obviously going to be areas of disagreement. But I think overall, the important thing is that we do our best to work together and work with officials to try to get this pandemic under control and back to normal as soon as possible. And if that means, that should mean getting a vaccine and supporting the vaccines and supporting the people giving the vaccines and wearing your mask. And, there are also ways, obviously, while doing all of this, to support your local small businesses. I had a whole interview about that recently. Takeout from restaurants, organize virtual beer or wine or cheese tasting events where have food or wine or beer or something delivered to guests, and you all meet on Zoom and have a tasting of the beer and have a tasting of the products. There are no end of things that can be done. Um, yeah, just like I said, it's really been bothering me, so I thought I'd throw it on you this video. Bother me that, instead of being suspicious or questioning or angry at the situation, I think we as Masons, or myself as a Mason, we should be grateful, for the work that's been done, and the grateful that we live in a time of when we have this science and the ability to create these vaccines so quickly and to distribute these vaccines so quickly and to deliver to arms, in this case my arm, vaccines so quickly. And we live in that a time when that's possible, and we should be celebrating that, and we should be um, you know doing what we can to support measures to protect ourselves, and more importantly to protect each other. And also, finding a way to do that doesn't mean you can't also find a way to support your local businesses, order from them more, take more local services, things like that. So, anyways, that's a long way of saying I got my vaccine. I was happy to get my vaccine, and thank you to all of the workers at Windsor Health and everybody who was involved in this pop-up clinic and has been involved in vaccinations over the past several months. And even right from the start, all the people who were involved in organizing and just or involved in creating these vaccines and put all the work in, and I'm sure many sleepless nights. And with that, although I do feel fine, I got to admit my arm is a little bit sore, so I'm getting tired of holding up this phone. So thank you so much.